Number 1. Am I the asshole for yelling at my pregnant sister-in-law and telling my husband to choose me or her? See, I know it sounds wrong, but please hear me out. I'm currently typing this all up while my husband's entire family is sitting downstairs. So, I'm 29 female and have been married to my husband for 8 years. About 2 months ago, I had my third miscarriage, 31 weeks. I won't be talking about it because it makes me feel so depressed, but you'll need to remember this. About 4 months ago, my sister-in-law, 20, came crying at our doorstep telling us she's pregnant and her boyfriend didn't want anything to do with the pregnancy and had nowhere to go. My husband and I openly took her in and welcomed her into our home with open arms. For the first few weeks, it was hard for her, understandably. I sat with her for hours, holding her when she cried, binging our favorite TV shows, and eating so much ice cream we quite literally fell into a coma. It was bonding for us, so I thought. Here's where it starts going downhill. I take pride in my neat, clean home. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, did not. She would leave her clothes all around the house, leave her dirty dishes wherever, even went as far, and leaving her sex toys on our living room table. I tried to talk to her directly before I talked to my husband, but she immediately started crying and told me she'd try to be cleaner. I hugged her and told her it was okay, but this was a clear boundary for me. She told me it wouldn't happen again. But it only got worse. She told me I was expected to do her laundry, dishes, and clean her room daily because she's the pregnant one. Well, I do understand how hard it is being pregnant. I just couldn't allow feeling like a maid in my own home. Disclaimer, I bought this house, not my husband. It was all me. Not to mention my recent loss of my child. So I told my husband. But what he told me shocked me. His exact words were, "Honey, she's going through a lot right now. We really should be helping her out. Plus, it might make you feel better to take care of someone who's pregnant." I was pissed, to say the least. Make me feel better. She's going through a lot. Do we need to help her? Letting her stay with us wasn't enough? While I don't want to invalidate her pain, my husband and I were also going through our own problems. Anyway, we moved on. I did my best to maintain work and the household chores. My husband works 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., so he isn't around to help much. I work full-time from home, so it's been super stressful. When I even try to ask for help from my sister-in-law, she always makes an excuse, even if she's just watching TV. The one thing that pushed me over the edge was I went out to buy the one food that I have enjoyed eating after my miscarriage. I wrote my name on it and directly asked my sister-in-law to not eat it. Well, I went to go to my fridge to get it, and you'll never guess. She freaking ate it. Now you may think it's just food. I buy all the groceries and basically pay all the bills. I don't mind people having some of my food, but the one thing I ask to not be touched gets touched. I told my husband, and of course he rubbed it into my face that she's pregnant, I need to be less selfish, and life is about sacrifices. I was so upset I told him I felt like he and her were the horrible roommates people talk about on Reddit. He didn't take that well, LOL. Which leads us to my title. My sister-in-law planned a random baby shower party thing at my house. I personally didn't know if I could even be home when this was happening. I felt so hurt that she wouldn't talk to me, knowing everything that had happened, and that she would just invite random strangers into another person's home before asking. My husband urged me to go, told him it would permanently affect mine and her relationship. So, I told him I'd go. About halfway through the party, my husband and SIL announced that they wanted to show the nursery to everyone. I was confused. Nursery? She was staying that long? What room did she turn into a nursery? They told everyone to head upstairs, and that's when it hit me. They were talking about my nursery, for my baby, that I had just lost. A wave of emotions hit me when I saw everyone in my baby's nursery telling her what a good job they did setting it up. My setup, for my baby that my body failed to give me. I just lost it. I started sobbing, and then that sadness turned into pure rage. I started yelling at my sister-in-law, telling her she was the foulest human for putting me through everything she had for the last few months, making me feel like I was a maid or an object for her convenience. Through choked-up tears, I turned to my husband, whose jaw was on the floor. I turned my head to see his entire family just staring at me. I lost it again. Yelling, I looked at my sister-in-law, telling her, how dare she use my nursery for my baby? How dare she think she has the right? What she told me made me fall to my knees sobbing. It's not my fault you couldn't produce a child. Why let this go to waste? You're so selfish. My husband tried to pick me up off the floor, but I yelled again, standing to my knees, which were now shaking. I told him, pick. a dumbfounded look on his face. I yell it again, pick me or her. He couldn't even muster up anything to say. I just looked at him, pure betrayed. I pushed past the crowd of family and ran straight up here to tape this out. Even if no one sees this, at least it's helped me let these emotions out. Now's the point where I ask, am I the asshole? Update. I'm not quite sure if this is the proper way to do an update, but hopefully everyone can see it. I just want to address a few comments. I know I had a stillborn. The only reason I say miscarriage is because that is what my obstetrician told me was happening. Here's the update everyone's been asking for. Buckled up, it's a long one. After posting my story on Reddit, I sat on my bed, wiping my tears, and telling myself I would not take this disrespect. I walked downstairs, shutting my nursery door on the way. I was greeted by everyone comforting my sister-in-law. I kindly asked everyone besides my sister-in-law and husband to respectfully get the fuck out of my house. After all the dirty looks and shaming, it was just my husband, sister-in-law, and myself. They sat themselves on the couch not saying anything. I sat with them. The silence felt like forever. None of us had anything to say. I knew I'd have to start the conversation. I looked at my husband and said, "Did you decide?" He looked at me, just staring. I asked again in a firm tone this time. He ended up mumbling some sort of insult, and I couldn't make out what he said. Something with bitchy. I stood up and told them both to get out, then they wanted to talk. Telling me this is all a misunderstanding, they are sorry, blah blah blah. I grabbed a backpack from my shoe closet and told them to pack their shit. My sister-in-law told me I couldn't just make her leave, and I was a horrible person. I laughed in her face and told her this is my house, and I can do whatever I wanted. My husband stood next to me and told her it was only for a little while. I turned to him and said, "Oh, you too, get out." He got all mad and told me we were a married couple and that this isn't how marriage works. I told him no, it is not. Marriage is where two people support each other and do not treat their wife like shit. They both ended up leaving after many insults towards me. Oh, but wait, it's not over. This morning, as I was getting ready for a Zoom meeting with a few other co-workers when my husband showed up, I let him in, telling him to get whatever he needed and to go because I had to work. He started apologizing and telling me he wanted to make it right. I told him I just needed time away from him. Then he threw in my face, "Well, it's not my fault you lost our children. Maybe this would have never happened. Your sister was right. You are selfish." I have never made my husband feel like he cannot grieve with me over this. Never made him feel less than because of his pain. I turned around and slapped him in the face. I never condone violence, and I'm very upset I would ever do that to another human, but I just couldn't deal with this. He took a step back and then threw all of my makeup on the floor, which I get, but then he started breaking all of my decor in my bathroom. I yelled at him to stop and that I was sorry, but he just kept going. Even going as far as punching a hole in my bathroom wall. It was like I was seeing all of his bottled up emotions from our children's death come out. But he went too far when he tried to grab me, yelling in my face. I kicked him off and told him to get the fuck out. He walked out of the bathroom and I watched him break a few more items as he left. The second he left, I had a panic attack, looking at the mess he made, to even just seeing how much he hid his pain. I called my mother and told her everything that has been happening. I don't talk to my family much due to some past trauma with them. She told me she was on her way. The second she got here, I just broke down and she held me. Then she stood up and started taking pictures of everything he broke. I asked her what she was doing, and she turned to me and said, "We're suing this piece of shit." I honestly didn't even argue. I was so hurt by everything my husband did to me. My mom packed up my computer and I grabbed a few outfits. My mom and I drove to a hotel, and she insisted on staying with me. While I finished up work, my mom called a locksmith and my attorney. I will be divorcing him as well. So there it is. Here's the update everyone has been waiting for. I feel guilty for just giving up on my husband and 8 years of our marriage, but it's time for a divorce. I can't live like this, and neither can my husband. I wish I could say we moved on, forgave each other, and I got to see my sister-in-law have her baby. But that's not reality. Number 2. I killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. I haven't talked about this to anyone, even though it's been years. Even my closest friends, minus the ones that were there. One night when I was in college, I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark, but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road, there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him, he had already hit the good of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit, I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him, his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving, and they were all screaming and crying. He is lying on the side of the road with blood coming out of his nose and mouth. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was all right and calling 911. All I could say was, I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had set in what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while the paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it, and what still kills me today, was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done, it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything, and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to kill myself with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I'm not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually, I got my life back in order, joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally started to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends and actually going out. So maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Number 3. Would I be the asshole if I broke up with my GF for humiliating me? I, 23 male, have been with C, 23 female, for 4 years. We got together during our freshman year of college. We became very close, and we both held similar beliefs and wanted similar things out of life. We moved in with each other and grew really close, almost inseparable, during the pandemic. I wanted to marry this woman, until last night. C has been under more stress from work and family during the last few months. Her dad has cancer, and it hasn't been easy on her. She's been drinking more and more, and while I don't mind her drinking, it's how she gets when she's drunk is where I begin to have issues. She has a tendency to get pretty mean and say some awful things, talking about my appearance or how small my member is. She makes me feel like I'm not enough for her sexually or emotionally. She is almost always apologetic the next morning, and will spend the next few days after that trying to fix things, but will turn around and do it again when she drinks. It really came to a head last night when I took her and her friend out to a popular local bar. I volunteered to be their designated driver for the night. She's driven drunk before, and I didn't want her to make that choice again. I told her that I didn't want her to drink too much tonight, and she agreed that she wouldn't. The bar was packed when we got there. So we all went and sat at the bar and ordered some food and drinks. They were enjoying themselves, and I watched the game while they drank and enjoyed themselves. I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I came back, I noticed my girlfriend was getting loud and her friend screamed "sleeve" while laughing. She then said, as I walked up and was in earshot, that her ex was the biggest D she had, and she missed it. I pretended not to hear it because I knew she was getting drunk. I touched her back and sat down at the bar again before the guy sitting at the table grabs both our attention and asks us if I was the sleeve guy, and I immediately felt like I was going to be sick. These guys were laughing at me, and I asked C if she was serious, but she kept laughing. So I just grabbed my keys and walked out. I left both her and her friend there at the bar, and I drove home. I immediately packed up my essential stuff and I went to stay with a close friend for a few days. I didn't get any texts from C until about an hour after I left them there, asking where I was. I then got a bunch of missed calls and texts that weren't anything but angry. I answered one call and she was still slurring her words, and I heard she was in the bar still, so I hung up and turned off my ringer. I woke up to a stream of apology texts and more missed phone calls. She apologized and said she f***ed up and was wondering, when I was coming home, that I satisfy her and that I'm more than enough for her, that she'll make this right if I come home. I'm just done. I feel humiliated and embarrassed. She and I had what I thought was a good sexual relationship. We did and used toys, but I've never once not gone out of my way to pleasure her or get her off. I'm not the biggest guy down there. So yeah, I use a to help her get off too. I just didn't think she would use that against me like that. I don't want to go back home. I love her, but I feel really humiliated and like she doesn't respect me as a man or partner. Would I be the asshole if I broke up with her over this? She's been a perfect partner otherwise. I just feel like she didn't respect me at all. And after what she said about her ex, I can't help but suspect things. Update. I'm going to text C back and tell her that I'll be there tomorrow to talk and get the rest of my things. My supportive friend said, I don't have to worry about a place to stay for right now. She's always been one of my closest friends, so it feels good to have some support right now. I plan on ending things with C. My friend and her brother are going to go as well to make sure things don't go crazy. I don't know what C might do at this point.